間啦。福利
Good morning. We have formed a quorum. I now call to order the meeting of the special meeting of the panel on welfare services. Let's invite the team from the administration and deputations to join us.
好，歡迎呢政府部門嘅代表。
I'd like to welcome the following officials from the administration. We have Mr. Gordon John, PAS for Labour and Welfare, Ms. Maria Lau, Assistant Director, SWD, Mr. Winston Fung, PAS Home Affairs Bureau, Ms. Vega Wong, Assistant Director, Home Affairs Department, and Mr. Alfred Lee, Assistant Director, Housing Department. Today we have a dozen or so deputations and individuals in attendance. This is a continuation of the meeting on the 6th of May when we discussed the topic of support services for singletons. We know in Hong Kong we have many singletons, and as a global trend, singletons as a group is a fast-growing one. In 2016, according to by census statistics, there are more than 300,000, and now it's 450,000 in number. So many people lead their life as singletons. So in terms of social services and support services, what are we offering? And some singletons are saying that they are not well treated because many services are provided to families and very few are available to singletons.
今日呢，我哋比較多啲圍繞住呢係喺福利啦、房屋啦，同埋呢其他方面嘅提供嘅支援服務。
So today we'll be talking about housing and other support services.
好，請坐，請坐。
Please be seated.
好啦，作為主席咧，我都要提醒一下咁。
As chairman, I would like to remind all deputations and individuals in our meeting. Today we are here to talk about support services for singletons. This is a public hearing, so please pay attention to the following. We have an earpiece and a mic for you. Channel 0 is a floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, and Channel 3 Putonghua. If you have difficulties in using the devices, please let our staff member know. I'll invite the deputations to speak in turn. You have 3 minutes. And also, please be reminded that your speeches made here are not protected by Cap 382, Legislative Council powers and privileges. Neither are the written submissions protected by the ordinance. In other words, you have to show the liability of your speeches and submissions, if any. Please also pay attention to the notice to people attending electrical meetings in the gallery. And if you want to make a written submission later, do so after the meeting. Do we need to give you 5 minutes, administration, for an introduction? Yes, I will be brief. I'd like to thank all the concerned groups, deputations, and individuals for attending today's meeting. This topic is about support services for singletons. As the chairman has said earlier this month, the panel convened a meeting on this same subject. the relevant policy bureaus and departments have all sent their representatives here, including HAB, SWD, and Housing Department. We all know that support services for singletons cover a wide range of things. SWD and NGOs, subvented NGOs, are operating different service centers in the territory, providing needy people, including singletons, welfare services such as counseling, volunteer training, and more importantly, needy people will be referred to other community support services, including in case of financial need, financial assistance can be offered. For those who are in need but are not willing to come forward to seek help, apart from the traditional means such as the telephone, APIs, service referral, and other services to get in touch with these singletons so that their services can be referred. These organizations also train volunteers with so-called peer volunteers to get in touch with these singletons and families in need to encourage them to seek help. As stated in the paper for the last meeting, in terms of public rental housing, we provide certain support services. A few years ago, the housing point system was revised, and quotas were amended to enhance the chances of singletons getting PRH allocated. And we have also called a hostel service. The history and background of that is set out in the paper. And together with my colleagues from the SWD, HAB, and Housing Department, we will be able to offer further elaborations on the provision of hostel services for singletons. And we're happy to take questions after that. All right, deputations, you have 3 minutes. Please make the best use of it to let us know your views. Mr. Jiang, and from SOCO. My name is Jiang Wai. I'm from SOCO. I prepare a speech, but having heard the government's introduction, I would like to say this. We don't think that the point system for PRH will increase the chances or the number of units allocated to singleton. At the end of September 2015, for non-elderly singletons on the waiting list, there are 17,100. There are only a quota of 2,200, so it takes 7 years just to accommodate these group. Now in 2017, more and more singletons, non-elderly singletons over the age of 50 joining the queue. In other words, since the quota is so small, and not every year we allocate 2,200 to them, so these singletons over the age of 50 will have very little chance of getting a PRH. So the quota is annually 2,200. And 7 years it would take 7 years to just accommodate the existing waiting applicants. So how can you really solve this problem? According to recent media reports, the hostel service is the only means to help these singletons. And Mr. Lau Kong-wah said this on behalf of singletons, and that is because of the income that the choice is really limited. They can only live in a coffin night accommodation. It's difficult to lead a life. Don't think that a coffin night bed space is cheap. It can be expensive at 2,700, not counting the utility bills. So singleton people are paying rent, and rent represents a big part of their income. And with more and more expensive subdivided units, in the market, their difficulties will only deteriorate. So singleton hostel is the only humane way to provide a solution to help these people. But we have not increased the provision. In 2015, there are about 27,000 units in such a so-called substandard accommodation. And I think this is on the low side, 27,000, I mean, because we have discounted similar units in industrial buildings. So I would urge the government to build more singleton hostels to meet their needs. Mr. Chang, you say a bed space of 18 feet would cost you $2,700? Yes. We were talking about the quota and point system introduced in 2005, making it even more difficult for singletons to get PRH. But the Bureau is saying that it's helpful. Next, from SOCO, concerned group on street sleepers.
上入邊福利事務委員會官員一啲回應啦，其實今朝
Well, I think the response from the government has always been the same. They will be saying that there are different services, family service units and hostel can be provided. And the housing department is also saying that by having a quota and point system that they are helping singletons. But this year, CCF is not helping singletons anymore. And if you get minimum wage, it's said that a singleton can support himself. But we know many of them work casual jobs. Why don't you include them in the low-income allowance? And the PRH queue is really long. Yes, they've got some services as a nominal gesture. But I would like the friends to share with us why the services are more apparent than real. They have a hostel service for singletons. It has an occupancy rate of 85%, and they are saying that this can meet us social needs. The take-up rate is quite high. Actually, 85% is the highest. As stated in the agreement, it can never go any higher because when the former occupant leaves, you need to make preparations for another occupant to move in. So it will take a month for such a turnaround arrangement. So why do you think that 85% means that all the needs have been met? 20 years ago, it was provided because there were people in need of this, and now we have people living in cubicles, coffin-like bed space, and still the government is not thinking of doing anything new. The mentality remains as it was 20 years ago. You have youth hostels for those in the age group of 18 to 35, or 18 to 30. But what about those who are over 30? I asked some of them whether they would like to live in a youth hostel, and they said yes, because it was well ventilated with windows.
How come the government is only supporting young people but not middle-aged people? Now, why doesn't the government try to roll out more singleton hostels? Now, the government is creating a cycle. Now, these people cannot get low-income allowance. They cannot get subsidies from the community care fund, so they can only pay for subdivided flats or cubicles. And it's very difficult for them to get PRH flats. So who created this cycle? Is it the singletons themselves or the government? Yes, we will ask the government to answer you later. You have asked very specific questions. I hope the answers will also be specific. So are these policies just nominal? So there are so-called different programs, but no real support is given to the singletons. Next, Mr. Choi Tin Yam from DAB. Good morning. Before I speak, I would like to respond to what Mr. Cheng said. He talked about some figures. I myself am a social worker. From 2009 up to now, I have been in contact with a lot of subdivided flat tenants. So I really know what kind of rents they are paying. And I visit them in Sham Shui Po every day. And Mr. Cheng said that is $2,500 per month for a coven-like cubicle. That's true. Now, I have dealt with families who have no means and they have to pay for such cubicles. Now, for subdivided flats, the rental may be $4,500 now, and they have to share kitchens and toilets, and the fire safety facilities are very limited. I have been a social worker for family services. In each quarter, we have to put together an SFA statistics, and we have never reported the figures of singletons to the SWD because the number is not that big. And for SFA, I hope that we can get a breakdown of singletons. I hope that figure can be more clearly reflected. We have seen a lot of cases in the community. Many singletons, because their incomes are low, they cannot afford the high rent in Hong Kong, and they are forced to move to Shenzhen. I can give you some figures. I have lived in Shenzhen before. The rental there is about 3,200 RMB, and if he has to work in Hong Kong, then he has to spend about $500 on transport every month. If they want to apply for PRH, then they would not have a Hong Kong permanent address. The housing department always say that because they do not have a valid Hong Kong address, so that as a result they cannot apply. And Mr. Chen also mentioned singleton hostel. I'm glad that now there is youth hostel, although they're only for young people between the age of 18 and 30. But for youth hostel is not only for singleton young people. Couples can also apply for it, and the number of units cannot meet the demands of young people. And for PRH applicants or PRH tenants, the housing department would visit them from time to time. So what if a person goes home very late? Can I speak for a little longer? Now, when the HD visits them, they would do it during office hours, so these tenants are not at home. And the HD would regard these people as not residing regularly in this flats. So I think the HD should do more in this regard. So other than singleton hostel, the SWD is also asked to incorporate singletons into the statistics. Next, from Civic Party, Lee Wai Lam. I have some figures to share with you. According to the Hong Kong Census and Statistics Department, Hong Kong population, there is 7.33 million. And singletons account for 4.5%. 300,000 of them are divorcee, and 28,000 of them are separated spouses. Now, for those who at the age of marriage and who have not wedded in the past 10 years, the number has increased. For example, between the age of 30 to 47, 30% of them are not married. So singletons will become an important part of our future population. However, the Hong Kong government hasn't looked at the needs of these people. For the government's policies and strategies, they have not taken care of the changes in society. This is really regrettable. Under the present system, we find three major problems. First, singletons have to move all the time. They may have to live in subdivided flats, and this subdivided flats really in very poor condition, but their rentals are high. You have some singleton hostel, but it's time limited. You have to ask them to leave after 2 to 3 months. As for the quota system, only several hundred places are given to them. As for PLH applications, you've heard the figures. On the waiting list, there are still 133,000 people waiting. And each year, only 2,000 places are offered to singletons. So it's impossible for singletons to be housed in PLH. And other than CSSA, they are not allowed to apply for other allowances. For example, low-income family allowance, they are not allowed to apply for that. And also, you do not provide spiritual support to them. A lot of people are living unhappily. They are under a lot of pressure at work. They want to talk to social workers. However, social workers still have very heavy already having very heavy workload, and there is a lack of social resources, so they cannot get enough support. So the Civic Party thinks that first you have to build more PLH. Now you are selling so many lands. Why don't you build more public housing for Hong Kong people? And also the quota for non-elderly one-person applicants should be cancelled. And you have to acknowledge that singleton will be a major part of our population in the future. So you should supply more counseling and financial assistance to them. Next, Mr. Mo Chun-yu. Good morning. I do not represent any organization. I'm just an ordinary citizen. Well, last week I saw your meeting, and government officials say that there are enough policies for singletons, so there are fewer places in singleton hostels. I think this is a joke. If that is the case, how come we have over 2,000 street sleepers? And how come there are so many people waiting for PLH flats? This is really ridiculous. Are you dreaming, government officials? For the PLH issue, well, there is a shortage of housing supply, and we can look at it from macroscopic and microscopic perspectives. Now, the government looks at this as if it were a business. The government should reallocate resources. Of course, we have to revise the QPS, the quota and points system. Now, you are favoring too much families and elderly people, but this, as a result, you discriminate against singletons. And have you thought about income ceiling? For one person family is only $11,000. This is really unrealistic. Well, how much is the rental for subdivided flats? It's expensive. It's impossible. Now, people do not want to live in subdivided flats. If they have other means, you still have to pay $5,000 or $6,000 for a subdivided flat. So if his income is just $12,000 a month, then how can a person survive? He would forever be trapped in the grassroots levels. Even university graduates can only get a monthly salary of $12,000. Now, you really are divorced from reality. You don't just look at statistics, and you don't just visit designated families in the poorer districts. Now, do you know anything about Tin Shui Wai? Do you know how many LRT stations are there? You should try to provide more land for building PLH. Now, there are so many statistics from the Census and Statistics Department. What are you using these figures for? You should reallocate resources. But you are not doing that. You always say that there is a shortage of land. So that's why you have to develop country parks. And for the high-tech sites, you want to build stadium. You have money to build stadium. You don't have money to build PRH. And you want a PRH, you want to build it in country parks. You are selling land all the time. You're making a lot of money. Are you trying to do business? This is what I want to say. You are very passionate. Mr. Mo Chuk Yin from Christian Society for Caring the Homeless. Now, I'm an outreach social worker in Sham Shui Po district. I would visit people who are living in abhorrent conditions. Now, they may living be subdivided flats, cubicles, or bed space. And each year, I will come in contact with 800 people like this, and over 70% of them are non-elderly, one-persons or singletons. Now, they have faced a lot of problems, family problems, unemployment, and some of them may even have physical or mental health problems. As for the policies for this group of people, on the part of the government, it is really far from sufficient. Singletons are facing a lot of problems, but the government only focus on families. So for a singleton, he has to take care of himself in all areas. Lately, I've been talking to a singleton. He has to feed himself, he has to work, he has to move house, he has to find a job. He has no support at all. He has no family support. So singletons are under the same pressure as families. So I have two questions for the government today. First, a few days ago, I talked to a singleton, and this is what he told me. He lives at a bed space on the 9th floor of a tenement building. He has to walk up 9 flights of stairs, and a few years ago he got injured, so he cannot work. Now he's moved to this unit. Now he's under housing pressure, and he's also suffering from industrial injury. Then he went to the SWD for help. Now, because he was married a long time ago, so he's not able to apply for a PRH, and he's told by the government that no help can be offered to him. And he said that for the Family Services Center, the activities are mainly for women and children. He cannot join any activities. He's a single man, so how can he join family activities? So for Family Services Centers, their supports are mainly family-based. So for integrated family services centers, if they focus on families, then how come there are no centers for singletons?
Can the government provide the full range of services to singletons? And my organization also provide hostels, but the period of stay is just under 6 months. Many of them cannot really afford to move in 6 months' time. Would the SWD consider extending the stay, the period of stay, and would the HAD be ready to build more hostels? Thank you. 6 deputations have spoken. All of them have touched on housing, and of course there are other issues, but there's a common topic, housing. Next, we have Mr. Lo Ka Wo, a concerned group on the rights of the singletons. Yes, I'm Lo Ka Wo. I don't have much to say. Other deputations may be able to tell you more about the cases they handled. But as a singleton, I want to tell you something interesting. The paper is interesting. There are social welfare support services as set out in that paper, but not much is offered by the housing department, apart from the so-called QPS, which is said to help us get PLH. I'm from a concerned group. So what are we going to compare ourselves to? I think we like to be treated like families. And you know that young people share accommodation. Can a number of singletons, say 2, 3, 4 singletons, submit an application together for a PLH unit? Can this be one of the solutions to offer a helping hand? Well, we have land, but land is mainly for luxury accommodation. But the problem is about the lack of PLH, a shortage of PLH. If you want social workers to help you to solve problem as a singleton, there may be attitude issues, or you may be getting some assistance so that you can reach out to and see other people. Well, I'm not a difficult person to talk to. But how can I get to know more people? I think the cause of the problem is clear. The problem is with long working hours and low wages. Has the Labour Department been offering us adequate help? The answer is very clear. Well, we don't have anyone from the Labour Department today. Well, so the problem, as you see it, is about long working hours and low wages. Mr. Lam, well, it's difficult to get a place in a singleton hostel. I have applied many times, and we cannot afford to pay $2,500 for a subdivided unit. I only work 4 hours a day, and at $60 an hour, I cannot afford the $2,500 in rent. And sometimes I just work 5 days a week. I cannot afford the rent. And how long is the wait for PLH under the QPS? Everyone wants to get a PLH unit. And for youth hostel, is for those from 18 to 30, and we have exceeded that age limit. So, how long are we going to wait? I have a friend who works here but lives in Samchuan, and he can just make do and manage to rent in Samchuan. They would like the social welfare department to help them, because he doesn't know how long he can hold on. I was a street sleeper for an extended period, and then I met Mr. Ching Chong Yun from SOCO, and now I was living in a Heiwa house on a temporary basis, and then after 6 months I had to move out. I have to stay outside for 3 months before I can return. And how much longer can I continue like that? I can't even meet my own expenses. I cannot afford the rent of 2,500, and I only have a 4-hour working day, and the waiting time for PRH is so long. We don't have high income. How can we survive? Maybe after leaving the hostel this time, I may have to sleep on the street again. I dare not tell my friends that I don't have a permanent accommodation. So I hope officials can find more ways to help singletons. Mr. Lam, are you on the waiting list of PRH? Yes. How long have you been waiting? 2 to 3 years. Well, and you have more than 20 years to go. And if you earn more than $11,000, then you are not qualified. So if you are still earning not more than $11,000 a month, in 20-odd years' time, you will be qualified. Mr. To, good morning. My name is Tao. A singleton. I'm a singleton. I've been in Hong Kong for more than 30 years. I was a street sleeper. In 2008, I applied for public rental housing. 2014, with the QPS. And then I did not qualify. And then I had to join the queue again under the QPS arrangement. I'm now living in a room with a costing $1,700, 4 feet by 6 feet. $1,700 in rent. It's a cubicle with lots of trees. Sleeping on the street is better in that regard. I'd like to get more help. It's really hopeless to wait for PRH. We'd like to get hostel places. It would be better if we are offered a place in a hostel. That's all I want to say. Thank you, Mr. To. I think we've heard this clearly. For cubicles and subdivided units, there are lots of trees, and sleeping on the street is, in comparison, better. That's why some people prefer to sleep in the street, and they may have rented a subdivided unit which they only use for storage. It's because of the sheer number of trees. Mr. Leung Pak Chung. I'll cut the long story short. A few months ago, well, I've lived in the various accommodations, including subdivided units, and I can't even afford to buy toilet paper. The subdivided unit cost me $2,600. The officials are stirring up the contradictions and conflicts. Well, they have high-sounding principles and beautiful words. Well, what care? Well, they're just here to listen. They don't show any care. Who would really inspect these units? They will only look into the camera in front of them. Well, is this something you do intentionally, or is it because of the system? Well, I think you know what I'm talking about. The the conflicts are escalating. Are you here to help me, or are you on the other side? Well, I have very vivid memories of what happened in the past. There's no need for me to repeat it. You have set a fire on, and you should put it off. Or you keep saying that I don't know, it's not the business of my department. I've heard this many times. I'm not targeting any particular officials or any director. Well, it's just the system that you are in. I'm so used to it. I don't know it has got anything to do with officialdom or inertia. That's all I want to say. Let me clarify two things. You've only got $200 to $300 left after paying rent, and you can't even afford to buy toilet paper? Yes. But the rent suddenly went up from 2,400 to 5,400.
冇人請啊！
And no one wanted to hire me. How long did it take to increase from 2,400 to 5,400? Well, just a few years. It happened a few years ago. So what could I do? I was cold. I was starving. So what should I do? Should I go rob a goldsmith shop? You are saying that the government is not trying to help because they want to create conflicts. Well, if they don't solve problems faced by singletons, they are creating conflicts. Why do they want to create social conflicts where they do not care about people's livelihood? Well, of course, they can speak very eloquently, but no one is doing anything about it. What has the government done about it? Ask yourselves, what have you done about it? I'm not even a grassroots person.
官我未見過啊！
Well, I've seen so many officials ever since the Japanese occupation. Well, I don't know any of officials. I don't think we need officials in the community. Look at our chief executive. He takes care of his personal affairs first. It's as simple as that.
They
You have no time for us. This is what you do. You're just perfunctory. You should go to the districts and find out what the hell it is for people to live. Go to Sham Shui Po. There's a lot of pollution there. If you spend half an hour in Sham Shui Po, you would have to take a shower for 2 days to clean yourself. This is reality. Why don't you go to the districts and take a look? I can do it. Why can't you? Thank you. I think many members have visited Sham Shui Po. You can go to Fucheng Estate. Next, Madam Su Camping. I'm also from Soko. I'm here on behalf of a resident, and here is a poem from her. It's a the title of it is my luxury apartment. My home doesn't look like a home, but my home is infested with rats and cockroaches, and fleas come to spend the night with me. My relatives and friends all laugh at me. Now, this is from a Mr. Hui. He used to be a street sleeper. We helped him, and now he's renting a subdivided flat. Well, for that subdivided unit, the rent is $2,000, and it has a floor area of only 30 square feet, and so it's $56 per square foot. For mid-level, the rental per square foot is the same. For Happy Valley is the same, and for Tai Kushing is $47 only. So this is really absurd. It's such a small unit, and it's a terrible environment that is infested with cockroaches and rats and fleas, but its per square foot rental is higher than that of a luxury flat. We have been fighting for rental control in 1998, and in 2004 the government abolished the rental control policy, and now we are in year 2017, and the property price is skyrocketing. However, the government does not consider imposing any rental control. Government officials say that they have provided basic protections. For example, CSSA is a safety net, and people can apply for PRH. This is easier said than done. Mr. Hui has been helped by us. Now he's renting a subdivided flat, but it's infested with cockroaches and rats. So we are referring him to Hei Wa Lau, which is a singleton hostel. He's 59 years old. And for Hei Wa Lau, there is an age limit of 60. So he has to move out again. So how are we going to rehouse him? Apply for PLH? But he's a very special case. He cannot apply for a PLH unit. Why? Because of his marital status. Now, he's divorced on the mainland. However, he lost the relevant certificates, and we've asked legislators to help, but the housing department said that this is not true, so he's not allowed to apply for PLH, so there's no rental control, and he cannot apply for PLH. As Mr. Leung said just now, then our society really doesn't need this kind of useless officials who are making a lot of money every month. Well, the department said that for individual cases, they can follow up on them. But I don't think these are isolated cases. This is a commonly seen phenomenon. Yes, I have seen many cases like this. It's maybe because of their marital status or other reasons. And the cases have been dragged on, and they have to move to subdivided flats, and they sleep on the street again, and this recurs. Now today, I am told that subdivided flats per square foot rental is even higher than that of luxury apartments. Next, Mr. So I Lam from Singleton and Concerned Group of Soko. I'm a member of Soko. Ever since the age of 18, I've been applying for PLH, and now 9 years have passed. Under the QPS, I think I still have to wait for 20 more years. And if the point system change again, then I may not be able to get a PLH flat before I die. Well, the government always says that it has to look at the needs of different people, especially families, so that singletons' rights are ignored. Well, we cannot get PLH flats. However, you have no housing policy for young singletons. Now, my health is not good, so I can only do casual jobs. I only make several $1,000s a month. So I'm forced to live in bed space apartment. I have to pay $1,800 to $2,000 a month, and electricity and water are not included. For my bed space, it only has an area of 12 square feet, and it is infested with fleas in the summer. So what should I do? Should I sleep on the street? I applied for singleton hostel. I've been waiting for half a year, and I'm told that I can only live a maximum of 3 years there, and after 3 years I have to restart. So if I go out to the rental market, can I afford it? And if the QPS doesn't change, I still have to wait for many, many years for PLH flats. And if the QPS change, I may not even get a flat. I cannot save money for my future need. If the government doesn't review the policy of singleton hostels, if singleton hostels are not built more, then I think there will be many more street sleepers. Yes, there is not enough singleton hostels, and even if you get a place there, you can only live there for 3 years. I don't know whether this is the HD's policy. I think you have to wait till 60 and then you can join another queue. Maybe this is the government's way of doing things. And Ms. Lyman Shan. Good morning. I'm just an ordinary citizen, and I want to talk about young people. I'm the mother of 2 young persons. And housing is the biggest problem for young people now. Well, we read the news about yesterday. If you want to buy a flat now, it's a huge amount of money. It's totally unaffordable. And if you want to apply for PLH, you are subject to a lot of restrictions. You have to wait for a very long time. You cannot see the end. I'm already living in a PLH unit. I and my husband and our 2 children. So when my children get married, what will happen? They won't be able to afford a private flat. And they cannot even rent a private flat, so we have to live together, and there will be a lot of conflicts, which may even end up in social problems. So I would like to ask the government, are you concerned about people's livelihood? Are you concerned about the grassroots? What protections can you provide to us? Thank you. Let us ask the administration to respond. Today we have government officials from different departments: Labor and Welfare Bureau, Social Welfare Department, Home Affairs Bureau, and Housing Department. Well, we have heard a lot of questions concerning housing, singleton hostels, etc. So for the singleton hostel policy, will you be reviewing it? As for youth hostel, people welcome it. However, there's an age limit of 30 years old. So for those between the age of 30 and 60, where should they live? And there are other questions about SWD. For example, the integrated family service centers, but they are only providing services for families. So how about singletons? Can a person be regarded as a family? And also for SSA, do you have statistics? Under the IFSCs, do you have statistics for FSAs? And there are questions about street sleepers and subdivided flats, coven flats are too expensive. It's really horrible. If you want to rent a space of 18 square feet, the rent is $2,700. Members can raise hands to ask questions, but first of all, let us ask the administration to respond. Today we have enough time, so let's listen to the government first, and then members can ask questions. And later on, if we still have time, there can be a second round of questions. Mr. Gordon Zhang. Thank you, Chairman, and I would like to thank the deputations for coming here today. We have been listening to you very carefully. First of all, let me talk about low-income allowance. How come singletons are not included? Well, low-income allowance is a new policy which was launched in May 2016. So for the working families who are not on CSSAs, we would provide allowances to them. Now, for this allowance, family is the base. Now, because we can see that for these families, there is only one breadwinner. They may have to support their spouse and children. So even though a person works full-time, his burden is still very heavy. So we think that we should be providing such families with help. So that's as a result, we are providing them with the low-income allowance. We want them to be self-reliant, and also we are also providing allowance for children so that the problem of intergenerational poverty can be addressed. So for the low-income allowance, at the moment we do not have plan to extend it to cover singletons. Well, the low-income allowance has been in place for a year now. In the middle of this year, we will conduct a comprehensive review. We will look at its operation and everything, its effect, and how will it impact on people's intention to work. So in the course of the review, we will be listening to the views of stakeholders. As for singletons, in 2013, we started to provide transport allowance. So singletons are already covered in this area. And for other areas, maybe my colleagues can respond to them. SWD and then HAB and HD can also answer. SWD, thank you for your views. You have told us about your needs for social services. Now, let me talk about the IFSC service. Now, are the services family-oriented? When we design the services, well, actually, now we have 65 IFSCs and 2 integrated services centers. So they are at the district levels. They are the starting point. Or anyone who has needs, they can come to our IFSC and talk to our social workers. Now, these centers may not meet all your service needs, but the social workers will look at your case, if no matter whether you're a family or a singleton, and then referral to other services will be made.
You mentioned small group services, or maybe insufficient employment services are offered. Well, we would look at the cases in the district individually, and we'll encourage our service centers to be aware of local characteristics and factors. We remind them again that they should pay attention to special needs in the district, and also to make suitable referrals for those seeking help. As for the FSA, the service agreement, that's not really a question of statistics. When the SWD provides the subvention, this service unit is required to provide a certain amount of work. We'll pay attention to the different needs of for different services in the district. Of course, we've heard that we need to pay more attention to the needs of singletons. Do you have any item under the FSA on services to singletons? No. Well, we asked that statistics be given. We have covered that. So what are you talking about in terms of the statistics? We want to get some statistics on the number of singletons who had tried to contact the family service centers and whether they were successfully referred to other services. We would like to know the number of singletons who have approached IFSCs for service in the district. We have a certain indicators for the service units to meet, but we don't have any figures on the number of singletons who had contacted IFSC. I don't think the figure can be obtained offhand, but we know that in the districts how many singletons there are and how many single families, single parents that there are. So we'll continue to pay attention to the service levels, which should suit the local population profile. How many service users of IFSC are singletons? So you have to find out whether you have ignored this group. In Hong Kong, we have altogether 450,000 singletons. So you should find out how many users, how many service users of IFSCs are singletons. Well, I don't have the figure with me. I will need to look into this. If it's single parents, you know how many there are, and ethnic minorities you also know, but we'd like to know how many singletons have used your services offered by the IFSCs. Please look into this. Labor Department, we have talked about the QPS. Mr. Lee. I thank the deputations for letting us know your views. We know that then the problem is the shortage of PLH, and this is a fact. When the current government took office in 2012, we published the long-term housing strategy document, and in the consultation process, one thing stood out, and that is there is a general shortage of supply. In 2014, when the long-term housing strategy was launched, we said the strategy would be supply-led because we want to increase supply as a solution on PLH in the coming 5 years. According to latest statistics, we're going to see the completion of or the construction of 94,000 units, which is higher than the figure in the previous 5-year period. And in the longer term, in the coming 10 years, we would like to build 280,000. PRH units. At the end of last year, we also identified the land shortage problem. We had a target of 250,000 units, but land is only sufficient for 220,000. So we have been striving to get more land for PRH. This is an ongoing task, a big challenge indeed. With the shortage of supply and many applicants waiting, we need to prioritize. And PRH has always been a valuable resource. So the HA has always been giving priorities to families and elderly people. And therefore there are target time limits set for families and elderly applicants. As for whether we can improve QPS, well, the LTHS steering committee did have a discussion. But the question is supply. If we have just a pie of this size, we give more to one group, and that would be at the expense of other groups in the waiting list. So in 2014, there was a review of the system, and we fine-tuned the QPS. We improved this point system, hoping that in terms points granted for the age element will be higher. So if the applicant is more senior in age, he will get more points, and if it's a 45, he will get even more points. The purpose is to allow the singletons who are senior in age would get a priority. But there are also people who do not really need PRH, but who join the queue at an early age. So apart from points, we have also increased the quota. The quota, admittedly, is not very big. It's 8% of the total with a cap of 2,000. After the review, we increased the percentage to 10% of the total, or 2,200. You may say it's not a lot. Yes, certainly it's not a lot. But with the pie of a limited size, if we give more units to the non-elderly singleton applicants, if we give them 200 more units, then there will be 200 fewer for families. So we have heard the community's aspirations, have done something to help non-elderly singleton applicants. The average waiting time now is 4.6 years, which is not low. The HA still wants to allocate more units to singleton applicants. There may be cases, special cases, as mentioned by the deputations, that we need to look into. According to the paper, as we set out in the paper, from the QPS, they can also use the express allocation system. It's an annual system, annual arrangement for applicants to get a PRH unit allocated more quickly. And we also have the compassionate housing system, and needy applicants can be referred by social workers to my department for allocation. But at the end of the day, the problem is a supply. So we need to do more to address the shortage problem first. And there's a simple question. Annually, 2,200 units are given to singleton applicants. Have you used all those units annually? There's nothing left? 2,200 units is the maximum, and the percentage of the total allowed is 10%. If we have 20,000 units in a particular year, we'll use up to 10%. Have you used all the units for this purpose? I have to check. Well, we have an allocation program for annual allocation exercise. Let's say if there are 20,000 available for allocation, we would reserve 2,000 for this group of applicants. So we would use up the quota as far as possible. Please tell us whether in the past 5 years the 10% quota of units were fully utilized. But the 10% was the result of a recent adjustment. It was 8%. Okay. So please tell us whether the 8% quota was fully utilized in the past few years. And I asked the HAD to respond to questions on singleton hostels and youth hostels. Let me say something about youth hostels. We know that the target clients are those in the age group of 18 to 30 and not necessarily singletons. Some of the places are for two-person accommodation, so couples can also apply. So this is to facilitate youth development. So the criteria, the eligibility criteria are different. We are not against a youth hostel. Or maybe Miss Wong can tell us whether the policy on singleton hostels can be reviewed. I thank the deputations for telling us your views. Some have commented on the singleton hostel policies, and I would like to talk about the role played by the HAD and the historical background of this policy. We have a policy to regulate the fire safety and building structural safety of bed space accommodations, and the singleton hostel policy is introduced to support this other policy. And it's meant as a temporary accommodation for the residents to plan for the longer term. And the number of places has dropped from 150 odd to 10. And we believe that the mission of singleton hostels has more or less been completed. We have changed the admission criteria. Referrals can be made by the SWD and welfare service units for those who need the short-term welfare accommodation. As a matter of fact, most of the residents have been referred by SWD or NGOs. HAD is responsible for the licensing and enforcement of bed space apartment policy. We are not the department responsible for the provision of singleton hostels. The operators of the hostels, of course, are in close liaison with the SWD and NGO to make sure that the residents' long-term needs such as housing and re-entry into the private sector can be taken care of. In the past, the general waiting time was about 2 months. And for most cases, the residents would live up to 2 to 3 years. And then there will be suitable arrangement to meet their long-term housing needs. That's all for my part.
So for 85% utilization rate, does it mean full house? Now for these two NGOs, And according to our past experience, the occupancy rate was about 85%. As for the vacancy, it's mainly because certain tenants moved out, so there will be a short period of time that the place is not taken up, because there are procedures for another person to take up the place. As to whether it's full house, well, the average waiting time is only 2 months. Well, so the occupancy rate is only 85%. It's not fully utilized. But there is no need for providing more singleton hostel places. And some people say that 85% is almost like full house because, well, there's move in and move out, and the residents would have to undergo physical examination, etc. So there is no 100% occupancy. There are always windows. So do you agree that 85% is tantamount to full house? Yes, we admit that, because for singleton hostel is to provide a short-term living arrangement for residents. So there will be windows as people move in and move out all the time. I believe members have questions. Mr. Chow just arrived, so let's ask Mr. Chow Wai Hong, a Kwai Ching District Councillor, to speak first. First of all, I would say that it's regrettable. Now, for the Welfare Services Panel, there are only 4 members here, and they are all pan-Democrats. So where are the pro-establishment members? Are they not concerned about us? I would like to thank the government officials for coming here. Now you are responsible for Hong Kong's welfare policies and services. For the present government, when it comes to housing and welfare policies, you haven't done much. You just patch up here and there. You haven't treated things seriously. In particular, you haven't looked at the interests of singletons. I have written an article here, and 3 minutes are not enough for me to express my views. Well, I hope that the new government will do better. If you are still in your positions, I hope you will seriously think about this. That is, what problems will Hong Kong be facing? For singletons, in particular low-income singletons, they suffer a lot. Now, they have very limited income, but they have to spend on the living and food. It's very difficult to make ends meet. And the so-called traffic allowance is very low. They have to spend on the healthcare, etc. I'm going to be 50 soon. I have a lot of singleton friends, and maybe they're not physically fit. Some of them suffer from chronic diseases. They may have to use expensive drugs. They may have to visit Chinese medicine practitioners all the time, but no help is offered to them. I hope the Welfare Services Panel and the government, as well as the hospital authority, will look at this problem squarely, because these people are facing the most difficult problem. Well, the government told us that now there is a very good system for singletons. Actually, I hate this QPS. With the QPS, the housing department will not be criticized by people that is departing from the 3-year waiting time. Now, you have been building a very limited number of PLH flats now when it's compared with the 90s. And for that waterfront site at Hong Mun Tin, how come it's turned from a PLH site into a private property site? Now, of course, our panel is very concerned about this. Otherwise, after the 6th of May, we won't be holding a public hearing today. And there are also other members attending this meeting, not only Pan-Democrats. Maybe they are just attending another meeting at the same time. As for low-income allowance, on the 12th of June, our panel will be discussing the topic. And at that time, Mr. Chong will come here to communicate with us again. Now, 3 members have raised their hands. Chen Chi-chun, Leung Kwok-hong, and Alvin Young. First, Ray Chen, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. And I would like to thank the deputations for coming here today to let us know their views. They tell the government and asked about their plight. I believe the government knows about their difficulties all the time, but does the government face them squarely? Now, the paper talks about early identification and intervention. So for the problems the singletons are facing, you have identified them already, but how about early intervention? So when you hear government officials' replies today, you would get very angry. Now, Chairman, you are very patient. You have been listening to the officials very patiently. Well, I'm not blaming the officials because their hands are bound. Now, for Singleton Hospital, it's just a short-term remedy. So it's just like the passage of the private columbarium bill. The private market has a lot of problems. So you are just providing temporary solutions. Will the government reconsider the policy of Singleton Hospital? Shouldn't it be just a short-term remedy? And for youth hostel, is not to solve housing problem as well. Well, it was proposed by Donald Trump in 2011. He said that some NGOs were not using the sites fully, so maybe a youth hostel should be built, and young people should be given places to live so that they can save money. Now, we've been talking about this for a very long time. Do you know when the first youth hostel will be completed? 2019. How many units? 78. And 2 of them are 2-person units. So only 80 people will be accommodated there. What a joke. Well, when I heard Donald Trump talked about youth hostel, I thought it's great. But by 2090, that young person who first heard this good news would turn 30, and he cannot apply for it. Now, nobody would object to the building of youth hostel or middle-aged people hostels. Now, Henderson is cooperating with Leung Kwok, and if the government has a good policy, then even private developers can help. But the government does not have such a policy direction. So this is what HAB has done so far. And the HD is the major department today. Now, a lot of people cannot afford to live in Hong Kong, and they have to live in Shenzhen, but they do not have a Hong Kong address, and then they cannot apply for PLH. And for those people who have not divorced properly, they may make declarations. I think the problem concerning their marital status can be resolved. As for Singleton Hostel or for Singleton living in PLH, well, representative has put forward a suggestion. So can several singletons live together in the same unit? Well, we've heard people saying that some people would pretend to be gay partners and then they will apply for PLH. But under your present system, singletons do not stand a good chance of getting PLH units. So can this be considered that as several singletons sharing a flat? Well, you have used up your time, so let's ask Mr. Lam Kwok Hong to put forward his questions. Well, can our assistants come to this meeting on our behalf? Well, we have seen all the assistants here, the assistant director, principal, assistant secretary, another assistant director, etc. So where are the accountable officials? So I want to ask you this. Can I ask my assistant to come attend this meeting on behalf of me? It's a waste of time. Do you have the ability and sincerity to solve the problem? Whether you attend this meeting or not answers the questions. So I think today's public hearing is a waste of time. It's a Saturday, and now all these deputations are here, and the government is sending assistants to attend the meeting. What a bad attitude. I want to talk about housing. Today I heard Michael Sun on the radio. He said that there are a lot of problems. Well, I think all our problems, housing problems today, are caused by Michael Sun's 9 measures. Now, he stopped building HOS. He reduced the production of PLH. He abolished rental control. All these were done by him. He thought he's a savior, but actually he pushed people into hell. Now we have a grave housing problem today, and under the leadership of Tung Chee-hwa, all these problems propped up. Tung Chee-hwa only gave favors to Li Ka-shing, and Donald Tsang was investigated by ICAC, and I'm sure 689 will soon be investigated by the ICAC. Well, how come the government abolished the rental control policy? As a result, landlords gain all the benefits. And if this policy has not been abolished, we would not see so many subdivided flats. And you are not building more PLH units. You also come up with the QPS system. You think you are deemed to be doing something. An official told me that he's always been doing extra. We have Mark 6 twice a week. So do you want us to rely on that? I think if a singleton wants to be granted a PLH flat, it would be easier for him to win the Mark 6 instead. And Chung Tak-sing said that the hostels have all been returned. Well, because he said that the occupancy rate was not high. And we understand that the unemployment situation is not structural. Well, some people may want to take a rest after a job or want to further his studies, so there would be a gap in between 2 jobs.
You only admitted that it was 85% today. At other panel meetings, you said you didn't want to waste resources. Well, please tell your senior officials, please ask your senior officials whether we can ask our assistants to attend meetings for us. Well, the PAS is not an assistant to the director. And the assistant director is not an assistant to the director. Well, we have assistants who are holders of doctorate degrees. These officials are are not elected by people. Mr. Alvin Young, I would like to know whether the officials have received the submission from SOCO, or have you read the document from SOCO? Yes, it's a very comprehensive study report. Shall I invite all the officials to respond one by one? Oh, no, not really. I asked this question because I want the official to say whether they subscribe to the views expressed in this so-called report, and how many of the statistics are already known to them, or are they saying that this is a partial report? And for reasons of people having to sleep on the street, half of the respondents said it was because of high rent. Would the officials tell us that that this is what they know, or through the service of the IFSC, they think there are other reasons, or the real causes are something else? So I would like to know whether the officials subscribe to the findings and views. Are you talking about the 2015 report on housing needs of non-elderly singletons? I'm talking about the 2017 study on street sleepers. Do you want the officials to respond one by one? Well, not. We don't need to do this for individual officials. Maybe we can get a response from the senior official here, Mr. Gordon Chong. We received 2 reports: the 2015 housing needs on the elderly, non-elderly singletons, and another one is the Christian concern group on housing needs. I haven't got a chance to read these 2 documents as we have just received them. Well, I'm not trying to challenge any official here. I've just received the reports. I want to establish whether we can rely on the figures in the reports. But since they haven't got time to read them, maybe we can offer our comments on the next occasion. I'll move on to the next question. Although the Civic Party has got some ideas, and based on this so-called report, we have noticed that some of these people require support. Is the establishment that we have in the IFSCs sufficient? Because there are so many social needs to meet. So how much is provided in the establishment of IFSCs to take care of the needs of singletons? Well, at present, the subvention is provided on a lump sum basis, and we don't maintain anything in terms of establishment. The center has the responsibility to do its own resource allocation. But in the FSA, we require the NGO to provide a certain level of service, to help and support a certain number of people, and how many volunteers and social workers should be there. The desire of the IFSC is that in the district it would be easy for residents nearby to get in touch of a social worker. But can the center meet all the needs of all the families and individuals? Well, if the centre cannot provide the service, referrals can be made. For example, the street sweepers, the IFSC serve these people. Also for mental wellness, they cover this. The IFSC social workers, we need to identify the needs. And if services can be provided by the centre, they will be provided. If not, then referrals can be made. So there's no establishment requirements or criteria. They would the centres will figure the matter out themselves. Now, the government provides a lump sum, and then you have some quantitative targets. But I don't think the deputations and individuals who are in attendance think that what you have done is already sufficient. So what can be done if services are not sufficient? Can the service units provide anything to help? Maybe I haven't really explained myself in great detail. The IFSCs are run both by the SWT and NGOs. I only touch on the situation with NGO-operated IFSCs, but the many or most IFSCs are run by the SWT. So we do know the needs in the districts. And apart from IFSCs, there are other welfare service units in the district. Our district welfare officers would have regard to the local situation and coordinate services. For example, if there's a greater need for mental wellness, then we may need to give emphasis to this. If there is a greater need from singletons, the emphasis would then be put on that area of work. So we are flexible. We don't just work in accordance with the FSA, although the FSA provide a framework of the services. But we would provide services in the light of district characteristics and needs. We still have some time. Maybe we can allow the deputation to respond to what the officials have told us. Who would like to say something again? Five of them. So each will be given 2 minutes. And if you have further views to make, you can use the 2 minutes allowed. Hands up, please.
要即係1、2、3、4、5、6個。
6. All right, so that's 6 deputations. 7 now.
好，唔該晒。好嘅，咁我就按次序啦，好嘛？就係鄭強鄭。
Mr. Jiang Wei. I'll start now. I want to respond to the Housing Department. It said that in the consultation under the LTHS, you wanted to give priority to families. And for non-elderly singletons, they have a chance to move up the social ladder, and they may not be in need of PRH as much. That's why you introduced the QPS. But if you look at the figures that you have maintained, the non-elderly singleton applicants are on the rise. Last year there was the review, and some of them were removed from the list. But this is just an illusion. There's a rising trend of these singleton applicants. But then the LTHS provides an estimation that they would not be in need of PRH. Well, they are only eligible if their income does not exceed the income limit all the time. These people are working casual jobs and even unemployed, so the number would still be high after cutting some of them from the list. And I believe the number is going to rise in time. On the question of singleton hostels, the Assistant Director, Ms. Wong, said to tie in with the bed space, apartment ordinance, singleton hostels would now complete the mission set at the time. Yes, that mission might have been completed, but would you also review that it may have a new mission now? The low-income family allowance is about encouraging self-reliance. But if you don't include one-person households, they have to work. Without the low-income supplement, they may fall into the CSSA safety net. So perhaps you should reconsider whether singletons can also get a low-income allowance. And we also mentioned the question of CSSA rent allowance being insufficient to to pay actual rent that they have to pay. And now out of their meager income, they may have to fork out another $300 to $500 to pay rent. And they can't even then afford to buy toilet paper. So officials should find ways to help these people. And if you will get a place in Heiwa House, you need to pay a deposit. But they cannot apply for the deposit to be paid for them. So these needy people will have to find a way to get the deposit required before they can be admitted to Heiwa Lao. And I have encountered a number of cases whereby the deposits cannot be granted by the SWD. So I hope help can be extended to them. And the HAD is very fair in saying that 85% occupancy rate is actually full house. I hope that the same rate will not be advanced to refuse to act.
Mr. Choi Tin-yam, I would like to respond to Ms. Lau. She talks about the IFSC and there are different characteristics in different districts. Now, I have worked for IFSC. Yes, I understand that each district would have its characteristics. However, there are common characteristics. That is, IFSC's staff would have to handle many domestic violence cases. And for Mr. Mo's question about IFSCs, do they organize activities for singletons? Yes, we do. We organize activities for male singletons. For example, we have a weight loss program for single men, in particular during international football matches. We would organize this kind of programs. However, our priority is compassionate rehousing, domestic violence, and these households would have more urgent needs. We also wanted to take care of singletons' needs, but we do not have the capacity. One IFSS would have to take care of 100 to 130,000 people, so it's really difficult. So has the WS they consider increasing the ratio of social worker? Because with the limited manpower, we cannot do so many things. Mr. Lee Wai-lam. What I want to say is, just now I heard Mr. To, Mr. Lam about their stories. And they are here to share their experiences. I don't think it's an easy thing to do. Not anyone can do it. I hope you can be compassionate. If you or your friends and families are in the same situation, what would you do? I know you have a lot of boundaries when you work, or you just have limited capability. But when it comes to policies, you can always provide your advices and comments. You should think for these needy people. The government should take care of the people. You shouldn't wait for people to come to lodge complaints. And you shouldn't use statistics to formulate useless policies. You should be more sympathetic. What if you were in the same situation? Would you also launch the same policy? Thank you. Mr. Lo Chun-yu, I want to respond to 2 points. First, the HD said that they have been building PLH all the time. So in your layout plan, would you allocate units for singletons? If you are building 2 to 3 member household units all the time, then how can you provide the singletons with smaller units? Now you have you should forecast the future needs. You should ask the CSD and actuaries to do the calculation. If you don't do that, you cannot solve the problem. And also for SWD in Yamate, there is a street sleeper's home. I don't know if you have seen it. I think its condition is worse than that of subdivided flats because it's on top of a refuse collection point. Well, do the government officials know that the street sleepers are leading such a life? You put them on top of a refuse collection point. This not humane. You have to be compassionate. Now, if you're just making $12,000 a month, if you don't have your own living space, do you think you can survive? You have to think in other people's shoes. You don't just go visit the districts as if you were putting up a show. If you go to districts like that, you won't see the real thing. For the street sleepers center, I think it's under the HAD. Mr. Mo, check in. I want to respond to 2 points. First, just now the HAD talked about singleton hostels, and it's not different from the last time I heard from them, so I'm a bit disappointed. Well, for the bed space apartments ordinance, you launched the singleton hostel to solve the problem. And now we have subdivided flats and cubicles. They are another set of problems. So would you have new measures to tackle these problems? Bed space apartments ordinance and singleton hostels were in place to solve building structure and fire services problems. Today, subdivided flats and cubicles are also facing this kind of problems. You don't know how many fires have happened in subdivided flats. In the past half a year, 8 fire cases involved subdivided flats and cubicles. And there's a person sitting upstairs. He experienced this fire firsthand. His life was threatened. So would the government face the building structure and fire safety problems of subdivided flats squarely? Will you build more singleton hostels so that its problems can be addressed? And for applying for PRH, some applicants may have unresolved marital status problems. These are not isolated cases. I have seen many cases like this. These people might have got married in the past, but they couldn't find their spouse, and they cannot go through the divorce procedure. So it will be impossible for them to apply for a PRH unit. Dr. Kwok, do you have questions? I'll give you 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I have read the government's paper, but I hope the government will answer me clearly. What is the government's singleton policy? Now, for the HD, HAD, or SWD, they do not have clear singleton policies. For HD, I think it's just trying to kick the singletons out. As for HAD and SWD, well, as for the singleton supports they provide is really ridiculous. Now, when you talk about providing support for singletons, you talked about family support. So if they have a family, how could they be called singletons? And for IFSCs, well, it seems that it provides all sorts of service, mental health service, helping families with domestic violence. So everything's put into the center. So this is a wrong policy. Can you give me some fresh answers? Can you set up service centers for singletons? This shouldn't be done by NGOs, because they do not have resources for this. So the government has to do that. And also, can you help singletons in terms of employment, family, housing, etc.? There should be a singleton policy. Who would answer this question? I don't know which department should be answering me. Should the principal assistant secretary be taking up the questions? For the singleton service center, it should be under SWD. Now, SWD, would you set up a singleton service center? Dr. Kwok has talked about the IFSCs and whether it's effective. In the past, we have conducted a review as to whether this model can meet the needs of the communities. We have consulted service users, stakeholders, and NGOs who are operating IFSCs. We think that the model itself is helpful, because the concept is a one-stop service provider. Just now the member asked whether a center can provide all the services. Now, in terms of design, we do not expect that to be done. But when there is a need, a person can go to this kind of center, and then the social workers can refer him to relevant services. Maybe I can also answer Mr. Choi's questions concerning IFSCs. That's about the manpower ratio and whether it can meet the community's needs. Now, for IFSCs, it seems that they cover a lot of areas. For example, domestic violence. As I explained just now, if it's domestic violence, we have a specific team to look after that. So it's not handled by the IFSC staff. As to whether we have reviewed whether the these more services should be provided. Well, we have been reviewing the service demands all the time, and we would try to get more resources if we see there are more demands. I asked you a very clear question. Now you are refusing to set up a singleton service center, right? So how can you focus on their needs? So this is a department store, and if there's nothing suitable for you, it's just your misfortune. We did have centers for single parents. We have reviewed the mode of service, and we have also talked to universities. At that time, it was suggested that IFSCs be set up. So it is like a one-stop shop, and it provides a triage service. So it is not a dedicated single parent center or a singleton center, and it's not that we do not serve these types of people. So anyone can go into an IFSC. It's a one-stop service provider. So when you have a need, you go into the center, then the social worker will try to identify suitable services for you. If the services can be provided by the center, it will do so. Otherwise, referral will be made. Due to the time constraints, let's be fast. Mr. Chow, 2 minutes. Well, I don't want to go into great details. I just want to focus on the singleton hostel. Mr. Ray Chen says that this is not a housing policy. However, to a certain extent, this helps people. Well, some people may have to live alone. So it has taken the government 10 years to create 70 places. But the government should make use of vacated schools or even some public space. For example, the space under flyovers. You can build container apartments, and singletons should be allowed to move to such places, and this can also help solve the street sleeper problems. How come the government has never considered this? Now you want to give the singletons 5 years time so that they can save some money. So what will happen after 5 years? Would you give them a PLH unit, or will they be fighting for subdivided flats with other people? Have the government thought about the way forward? What will happen to the people who have lived in singleton hostels? I don't see a long-term plan on the side of the government. Some people talk to me. They were tertiary institute graduates in the 80s, but now their trades are declining. They want to apply to attend certain courses, but because they have such academic qualifications, so they cannot enjoy government allowance. So can the government subsidize these people to take retraining courses? Well, they are middle-aged. Most of them are middle-aged singletons. Well, time is almost up today, and there are concrete questions. I hope that the SWD would answer them in writing later. And also for those people who live in Shenzhen, they do not have a Hong Kong address, so they cannot apply for a lot of things in Hong Kong. For example, rental deposit, even though they want to live in singleton hostels. So these are specific questions. Please answer them. We've had a lot of voices. We understand that it's very difficult for some of the departments to give us concrete answer right now. But how about singleton hostels. Yes, it has completed its historical mission. But how about the present problems? We have subdivided flats, cubicles, and coffin-like rooms. So when will these problems be resolved? Do we want to wait until they turn into history? Questions from members? Chairman, I have an interesting question. Now, it is said that a scholar agreed to the creation of IFSC. Is it Mr. Law Chi Kong? Because he will be an accountable official in the new government. No, it's from a team. I think Professor Nelson Chow was also in the team. Senator Zhang was also in the team, as well as Zhou Leung. Thank you. We'll conclude our meeting now. Thank you for coming. And I would like to thank the deputations and individuals who come to express their views. All your views will be recorded in our minutes. Thank you. And thank you, government officials.